When the judges go savage, no one's safe. Get ready for some brutally honest takedowns.
This is MasterChef Canada.
Yeah, it's not simply luck or misfortune that he's earned himself the nickname Demon Chef. Now, you might be surprised to see this guy headlining a video with a title like this. But let me tell you, it's no accident. Piss the guy off and you've unleashed the beast.
Very spicy food, don't you?
Yes.
I don't.
And guess who was at the receiving end of his rage? This contestant right here. So what happened is, in season 1, Alvin completely lost his cool over a pretty mediocre dish.
Smelled croquettes with chili lime sauce.
It all started with the elimination challenge when Marina, the winner of the previous challenge, decided to enact her revenge on the rest of the contestants. Well, she had a choice to make, to pick an ingredient for the rest of the home cooks. A classic advantage with deadly potential. Oh boy, talk about a real challenge. I mean, cooking with smelt is no joke. Not surprising why some contestants grew worried about the task ahead. I mean, this fish could be the end of them.
Who named that fish?
But there was this one contestant who knew just what to do. Or so he thought.
Smells. Think, man. Portuguese, fish, so.
Danny, buddy, maybe not so soon. Cause if there's anything we all know about MasterChef, it's that it never goes exactly how we think it will. Anyway, the clock had struck and Danny got off to a quick start. But that's when the judges dropped by to pay a visit to his station.
Smelts and chorizo.
No chorizo in this.
Really?
While Danny sounded confident, Michael wasn't too sure.
At the end of this challenge, at least one home cook will be eliminated.
Yeah, you could tell that it wasn't the smartest move. But Danny was oblivious to the consequences. But wait till you see what he did next. As soon as Michael left his station, Danny started busting out some illegal moves. I mean, why would you even do that? You just ruined the dish in a single move. Every single person who watched him puree that perfectly cut piece of fish was in shock.
Pureed smelts is a no-no.
Well, I have to agree with Mirinda here. Alvin was especially getting concerned, and believe me, those fears were far from unfounded.
You know, Danny's making a croquette. I can see the smell. It doesn't have a lot of flavor and being lost in the potato and the seasoning.
And here I was, hoping there would come a time when Danny would realize what a stupid mistake he made. Not like he could do anything about it, but, well, this dude was riding the high wave of confidence, and there was no looking back for him.
I'm in my zone. If they're all nervous,
Crap.
I'm cool as cucumber.
Yeah, we'll see about that, Danny. Anyway, when it was time to present the dish, you have to see how things went down. But before that, let's take a moment to soak in this abomination before our eyes.
Smelled croquettes with chili lime sauce.
Now, Claudio's reaction to Danny's fishy move was pretty straightforward. Yeah, I'm sure Danny was kinda disappointed with his reaction. But he wasn't prepared for what Alvin had in store. I mean, that's the real highlight of this video, and let me tell you, the guy was crushed.
Arms folded like this. You're very cool.
Always.
Ooh, there we go. And mind you, he hadn't even tasted the thing yet. He was probably preparing himself for the worst, but he never could have imagined it would go quite like this.
I mean, this is MasterChef Canada. And you give me this?
Alvin's outburst was completely valid. What bothered him was the fact that Danny hadn't just messed up the dish, but was also pretty proud of it. Now, when I went down into the comments to see how people were feeling, one user couldn't help but point out how strict Alvin was. I mean, sure, he can be pretty uptight and demanding with his dishes, but that's only because he expects the best. After all, you can't possibly come to MasterChef and present mediocre dishes and hope to win. It's MasterChef, not some backyard barbecue. Alvin's tough love might seem harsh, but he's pushing the contestants to reach their full potential. Though Danny knew it was a risky move, he went with it and pureed the hell out of his smelt. I'm sure he learned a lesson he wouldn't forget soon.
I'm pretty much screwed. I could be going home for croquettes.
It wasn't surprising to see Danny's dish being called out as one among the worst for the night. But can you believe that the other two dishes were worse than his mushy mess? Now, make sure to keep an eye out on the channel, where I'm going to feature those two dishes that lost out to Danny's disaster in an upcoming video. Since they lost to that travesty, well, they're going to need plenty of airtime of their own. For now, here comes a contestant who made Alvin really see red.
What's going on here? Smelled croquettes with chili lime sauce.
But before I get to the point where Alvin almost tore down the place, let's quickly recap and see what led him to his eventual freakout. It all happened with the elimination challenge in motion. Being the winner of the Mystery Box Challenge, John was bestowed with the power to choose the style of food or dish the rest of the contestants would have to cook with. So, John was offered 3 Asian-themed dishes to pick from. A curry from India with roti, huh? Bonassini's favorite, I bet. Wonder what Aprile's is? And then there was Alvin. When you have a palate like his, you better bet on his favorite thing being completely out of the ordinary.
A beautiful bowl of Japanese ramen.
Yup, he went for the jugular with a bowl of Japanese ramen noodle soup, which let me remind you is a killer dish to nail. Although it might look simple, all the best ramen places spend days on all of their ingredients before ultimately throwing them together at the peak of their flavor.
It's a balance that would determine his success.
Now, I personally would have gone for the ramen considering it's way tougher to make, so it would have been a real challenge for the contestants. But hey, that's just me. As for John, this is what he went for.
That John chose was...
Alright, stir fry it is. Now you'd think with something so simple, there wouldn't be much room to mess it up. I mean, how hard can it be to toss a few veggies in a pan with some sauce, huh? But let me tell you, you'd be surprised to see how easily things can go wrong with it. Even a dish that seems foolproof can go sideways if you're not careful. And one contestant learned this the hard way. So the clock had struck and the contestants were off to the pantry to fill their baskets. And Kyle was feeling rather good about the challenge.
I have eaten my fair share of stir fries. I think it's pretty easy.
The confidence was honestly kinda cute. But it's his idea behind the dish I'm worried about. See, experimentation is great only as long as you can execute it well. As for Kyle, well, he was neither lucky nor skilled enough to pull that off. When he was prepping his dish and making sure everything was coming together, Alvin decided to give his station a much-needed visit.
I'm good. Are you confident?
I'm very confident.
Very confident? You're not going home, eh?
No, I'm definitely not going home today.
Now, if I were you, I wouldn't be too sure. But hey, it's Kyle we're talking about. You see, Kyle revealed his master plan for the dish to Alvin, and let's just say Alvin wasn't fully on board with the direction the home cook was going.
Don't know how I'm gonna eat this with my chopsticks. Good luck. I hope it tastes good.
That's not a good sign now, is it? The dish wasn't even ready, and Alvin could already pick out all the flaws. My guess? The dish was already doomed. But Kyle didn't think so.
He's gonna take pity on me.
I'm looking at my plate and I have no fears.
Oh, he was brimming with confidence, or should I say overconfidence. He really thought he could impress the judges with it, which to me at this point seems highly unlikely. Anyway, when it was his turn to present the dish before the judges, here's what he brought to the front.
I did a sesame crusted cod, rice done in a lobster mushroom broth.
You know, to me, it looked like one hot mess. But it was Alvin's reaction to the dish that was the highlight of the entire episode.
I tell you, Carl, I had stir fries all over the world.
Kyle's dish was honestly puzzling to Alvin, and understandably so. It was weird, at least visually. And let's be honest, what the heck was Kyle even thinking? I mean, it's gotta be up there with the most awful looking dishes I have ever seen. Alvin's frustration was almost palpable. The more he looked at the dish, the more he got pissed.
Does that belong to a stir fry? This size?
No, chef.
The veggies, which are the core ingredients of the stir fry, weren't even chopped. Like, buddy, you got a whole hour to prepare a simple stir fry and you didn't even bother to chop your greens, right? And don't even get me started on the rice.
What rice did you use?
I used basmati rice.
Forget the veggies, he couldn't even cook rice to perfection. At this point, Alvin was struggling to keep his cool. It'd be weirder if he did keep his cool. Some users could believe that such a basic fact, to not use basmati rice in Asian cuisine, went over Kyle's head. Like, come on, basmati rice out of all things? What pissed me off even more was his arrogance saying there was no way he was going home. Like, dude, chill. That's wishful thinking at this point. But before he unleashed the next wave of destruction, he had to make sure of one little detail.
Asparagus and mushroom stir fry with some grilled chicken. Should be yummy.
If I were Kyle, I'd take Alvin's words pretty seriously. Kyle clearly had no idea what he was doing in the kitchen. Honestly, if you can't even handle basic tasks like chopping veggies or steaming rice, then you don't deserve your apron in my book. But you know what? Alvin's final think again really hit different. It was exactly what Kyle needed to hear to realize he wasn't ready for this level of competition. But hey, Kyle wasn't the only one who was at the receiving end of Alvin's wrath.
I tell you, I've never seen like this. You'll throw away the chopstick for this one.
Now, do you remember Dale from season 1? Yeah, the same guy who got chewed out by Alvin to no end. So, it was yet another elimination challenge, and as usual, there's always one contestant who had the power to decide their fellow contestants and their fate. And this time, the honor lay in the hands of this contestant right here.
Thank you so much, chefs.
I won the most important challenge.
Now, let me tell you, this elimination round came with more surprises than you can imagine. Yeah, when the judges said every part, they mean every part.
The tongue. The challenge here is removing the skin.
Personally speaking, I wouldn't even touch those parts, much less eat them. Well, except maybe for the steak. But hey, we're only getting started here. Wait till you hear the rest of it.
Which cuts each of your fellow competitors will have to cook with today?
Now you must be thinking, since Dale made the list, he must have gotten a tough cut, maybe like the beef tongue or beef brain. But oh no, our guy here ended up with the easiest one of the bunch. Any guesses? Well, check this out.
Eric gives me the tomahawk steak. I think it's a gift.
Yeah, that's right. That's like every chef's dream. Talk about luck. And now, if you're wondering how he could mess up with such an easy cut, that's where the challenge comes into play. The easier it looks, the more deceiving it is. And just like everyone else that had come before him, Dale underestimated the intensity of the task.
I don't think I'm going home on this today for sure. And I would be very embarrassed if I did.
Now, ideally, he should be able to breeze through the challenge like a champ, considering he got the easiest cut. But since he made it to this list, I think you know that's not what happened. So there he was, completely invested in preparing his dish when the judges walked over for a quick update.
You did what's in the spice mix?
Salt, black pepper, white pepper, garlic powder.
Dale must have thought he was nailing the challenge, but when he heard what Michael had to say, his heart sank to the floor.
It's very generic, but I don't like to mess with meat.
Just enhance the flavor of the meat, huh? So all you're gonna be doing in that 60 minutes is just slightly improve the already existing flavor of the meat. Geez, just admit you're lazy enough to not want to take a risk. Anyways, just when you thought he was done plating, something crazy happened.
I decided to go a little on the rarer side compared to the medium rare side.
So you're saying you couldn't even perfect a cut as simple as that? I'm pretty sure there's a difference between rare and medium rare. One whole word really. Rare being legit raw and medium not so much. Well, it looks like things didn't exactly pan out for him the way he'd hoped for, but I can't wait to see how the judges would react.
You're up next.
The dish today is spiced tomahawk steak.
So let's see what Michael had to say. Presenting a bad dish is one thing, but defending it? The kind of lessons you want to be taking away from the show? But Alvin was only getting started. After schooling him for his poor attitude, Alvin decided to dig deeper and tear apart Dale's actual dish.
Nobody eats ribeye this thick. Rare.
I mean, who wants to eat raw beef? Definitely not me. As for the taste, Alvin's reaction said it all. Honestly, Alvin's anger was completely valid. I mean, not only you boast about nailing a round, but you refuse to accept the fault even when the judges themselves point it out. And I'm not the only one who thinks that. There are many users out there who cannot stand Dale's attitude. Like it all would have made sense if his attitude matched his talent, but nope, this guy is far from talented. I mean, come on, serving raw stuff? Like, he is deliberately trying to send people to the hospital at worst, and just plain stupid at best. As for Alvin's reaction, he didn't have to do anything really to express just how disappointed he was, and people definitely caught on to that real quick. That's like another level of delusional.
Emotionally and mentally, this is the lowest I've been so far.
I mean, if the dish was somewhat decent, it'd have been understandable why you'd want to defend it, but Dale's dish wasn't decent, it was a disaster. And instead of owning up to his mistakes, he decided to be a douche, and clearly it didn't sit well with Alvin. But hey, let's keep things moving, shall we? Because this next dish wasn't just bad, but it also sent the contestant home straight up.
I want so badly to get in the top 10. You don't want to be number 11.
Alright, so I'm talking about Carly from season 1. So it was the elimination challenge, and here's what it was all about.
This elimination challenge isn't just about any desserts. It's about beloved Canadian classics.
That's right, the theme of the challenge was desserts, and these were the options that were odd-8 out in front of the contestants.
The butter tart. It's an irresistible blend of butter, brown sugar.
And that wasn't the end of it.
Rustic and delicious, and one of Canada's oldest desserts.
Honestly, my personal favorite. Blueberries. Whether it's an overnight oatmeal, smoothie, or eaten as is, blueberries are my go-to option. But of course, those weren't the only options.
It's a chocolate and coconut crumb base.
Oh, who saw that coming now, huh? But let's see which of these gets picked.
The Nanaimo bar.
Now here's the thing, Carly wasn't exactly what you'd call a dessert person. which sucks big time because this challenge was all about those sweet treats.
I don't usually do desserts. I'm not a dessert person, and this dessert for me is always a risk.
Well, all we can do is hope she delivers, but since she made the list, that seems unlikely. Now, let's quickly fast forward to the tasting, and it was Carly's turn to present her creation.
It's a toasted coconut and white chocolate cup with custard and walnut filling.
She made a Nanaimo bar cup with walnuts, custard, and white chocolate, and although it sounds so good, the visuals were way off. And here's the thing, she wasn't even planning on making cupcakes to begin with.
Did this come out the way you envisioned?
No, I envisioned it that they were in ball form.
Well, at least she's honest about her shortcomings. But hey, just because the visuals are bad doesn't mean the taste is too...
Just so drab, so blah. It's very dry.
And then came Alvin. Given his history, as this man walked up to your dish, I bet most contestants are praying he doesn't end up destroying both you and your dish. Sadly, in Carly's case, that's exactly what happened.
Chef Alvin?
If that was served in a restaurant...
Ouch. Alvin never really holds back, does he? It's like all he does is wait for someone to present one bad dish so he can finally unleash his fury. Sadly, the falling prey to his wrath this time was Carly. But hey, his reaction was totally justified. You really can't serve something like that in a restaurant and hope they don't send it back. And if you thought Alvin was done, you couldn't be more wrong.
And you said you hope to win. But with that, you don't have a hope.
Ouch. That's probably the worst blowout of all. And not gonna lie, I genuinely felt bad for her.
Not really good at making desserts, though.
But let's not forget, this is MasterChef we're talking about. People from far and wide put all of their hopes in making it to the show, and once you do, you just can't perform so poorly and manage to get away with it. Either you excel at everything, or you go home. Out here in MasterChef, you don't get the apron for nothing. Sadly, Carly's dish wasn't winning any awards that night, and it eventually became the sole reason to send her packing.
You are not going any further here at MasterChef Canada.
Tough luck, girl. While I personally do feel bad for her here, there are plenty of people out there who couldn't even believe Carly survived this long. According to them, she didn't deserve to be on the show in the first place. And you know what? I get where that opinion is coming from. She's on a cooking show and she's openly admitting she's not good with desserts? What do you expect then? First dessert challenge rolls around and you're done for. But for the next contestant, the judges didn't hold back. These moments left contestants shook. Prepare for some serious burns. In this next challenge, Chef Ramsay wasn't only pissed, but also embarrassed. In Season 4, after the red team lost the field challenge, they had to fight to be safe during the pressure test. However, before the contestants revealed what to do, Joe Bastanich explained that only 6 out of the 8 members would take part in the test. But that wasn't the only twist. This time, the judges would pick who would be cooking. On this occasion, contestants Baim Cruz and Jordan Roots were saved. Meanwhile, Luca Monfe, Natasha Kerniak, Christy Basiello, Brie Kozior, Beth Kirby, and Kathy Prieto had to go through the pressure test. And in this episode, during the test, the contestants were given 30 minutes to make some Eggs Benedict. Now, that might sound like a lot of time, but they only had one attempt to make the perfect dish. Who among these chefs do you think would ace this exciting test? Once the test began, each and every one of them faced problems while making it. And by the end of it, only Chrissy and Brie had the best dishes. Luca, Natasha, Beth, and Kathy had the worst ones. And since the judges couldn't pick the worst of the worst, they decided to send all 4 of them to Las Vegas. This was to determine their fate in another set of team and pressure challenges. For the team challenge, the judges paired Luca with Kathy and Beth with Natasha. These pairs were tasked with cooking a stunning burger at Chef Ramsay's burger restaurant. Luca took the lead for the red team, Beth headed the blue team, and Chef Ramsay was the expediter for both of them. The pressure was mounting, and everyone knew that Ramsay hated to see mistakes. The challenge first started off with 60 minutes of prep time. In the red team, Luca suggested using beef as a patty to go with the caramelized onions on top with some added sauce. He thought the cheese wouldn't be necessary, and Kathy, his partner, seemed to agree with whatever he said. She kept nodding all the way and went with his ideas, but in truth, she actually disagreed with them. Meanwhile, in the blue team, Beth came up with an idea of using beef as the patty as well. But she wanted it served with some prosciutto, goat cheese, and some aioli topped with eggs sunny side up. Natasha seemed to hesitate about the eggs, but still went with it. Both Kathy and Natasha were playing their own game. Since they had no say in their dishes, if anything went wrong, they could easily put the blame on their partners Luca and Beth. However, they seemed to forget one crucial point. It was a team challenge, and this meant their decision could backfire. While the prep was going on, both teams struggled to keep up with it. In the blue team, Natasha was having a few problems with the eggs. Beth asked for a better idea, but Natasha wanted to go with Beth's idea as their plan. As both tried to keep up with the eggs, they moved on to dressing the salad. And in the midst of it all, both of them forgot about the dish's main component, the patty. Had Chef Ramsay not reminded them, the blue team had no chance in this competition. And this left Ramsay frustrated. In a stern voice, Chef Ramsay warned them by saying this:
"Someone's going home tonight. At this stage, it's one of you."
The doors were close to being thrown open for the service, and there was only 3 minutes until they did. Both teams were hurrying up with their dishes, but Beth and Natasha still had no idea what to do with the eggs. These two contestants were letting their ego get in the way of the challenge. And everyone knows that when there's no teamwork, the challenge is bound to fail. At the very last minute, the ladies decided to scrap the eggs and go with goat cheese arugula. Was this a wise decision? Well, we're about to find out. The burgers from both teams were served simultaneously to the customers. Ultimately, they would have to vote on which one was better. Before we move on to the service, let's take a little look at what the blue team would be serving. As for the red team, they would be serving this. Now, as we said, these burgers were sent out at the same time to everyone. If the team said 2 minutes to the window, it had to be 2 minutes. And if Chef Ramsay needed to hold it back, it would only be for a max of 60 seconds. If they failed to turn it in, the team would start losing votes. Once the service began, both teams had 75 minutes to serve. As tickets poured into the kitchen, viewers got a glimpse of Chef Ramsay's serious demeanor that he's always had on Hell's Kitchen. But would he be less hard on everyone since it was MasterChef? Hell no. Anyway, the red team got off to an early start, and Ramsay had to remind the blue team of the rules by saying,
"Red team's in the window. Blue team, 60 seconds from now."
Chef Ramsay was on fire as usual, and the contestants were struggling to keep up.
I'm like talking to myself here.
Both teams were serving burgers at a good pace, but sometime later, the red team struggled with their orders. Chef Ramsay was getting impatient with the wait and started to count down the 60-second hold.
3, 2, 1.
As the time was about to run out, Luca finally walked up with some burgers. Whew, that was close. However, Ramsay spotted something that made him incredibly mad. You won't believe what he saw.
It's still moving. It's that raw.
Since they already ran out of time, there was no chance of refiring them, so the red team lost a point. Chef Ramsay sent them off with a final instruction and said this:
"Take that back. Then wake up."
Back in the blue team, Beth and Natasha were having problems preparing the buns. And in the process, they literally charred the hell out of a bun. Chef Ramsay picked it up with a sense of disbelief and said,
"You're out of control."
Sorry, Chef.
"You're way out of control."
While the kitchen was falling apart, in the dining room, the customers were casting their votes. Joe was tasked with walking around to get the customers' feedback when one of them called him out. One of the patrons said that she was happy with the blue team's burgers, but not so much with the red ones. When Joe tried to find out why, this is what he found.
I think it's undercooked.
It's raw.
Joe walked up with a burger to Chef Ramsay, who couldn't believe how such an undone burger even left the kitchen. He called the team out and gave them their last warning.
Got to stop, rethink, and get a grip.
Imagine coming across a raw burger at Chef Ramsay's restaurant. Now that's just embarrassing. As the challenge continued, Ramsay announced the arrival of VIPs, and take a wild guess who they were.
Welcome. Hey, sir.
It's all the other contestants.
Yep, they were none other than the other remaining contestants. To get some fair votes, Chef Ramsay asked both teams to take their aprons off. There would be no bias now, since the votes would only be based on the taste of things. In order to redeem themselves, Luca made a plan to send out burgers as soon as Ramsay called for them. By doing this, the blue team would struggle to catch up and miss the opportunity to get a vote. But would his plan be successful? The pressure at this point was intense.
Next 4, how long?
Now! Up now, Chef!
Just as planned, the red team started sending out burgers at a rapid pace, and the blue team struggled to keep up. With the red team firing out orders, the blue team started to crumble, like literally crumble. And Chef Ramsay couldn't believe his eyes.
How can you stand in front of a grill and burn buns?
The buns were almost charred once again, and Chef Ramsay had to say the obvious.
Even if you're blind, you smell their burn. Man!
Luca's plan actually worked, and the blue team failed to serve their last 4 burgers. And if there was one reason why they were leaving, then it had to be the burnt buns. However, Luca rushed to send out the orders. But in his team's haste, were the burgers still good? Now, let me remind you, the judging was completely based on the taste of the burgers and how perfectly they were cooked. The losing team would have to face a head-to-head challenge. And not surprisingly, with the standards that I just told you, with 4 burgers short from the blue team, this was the ultimate result.
It was close, but the blue team won.
Well, it was all about taste, guys, and the blue team nailed it. But this next contestant was so arrogant that he actually dished Chef Ramsay to his face. However, you have to see how Chef Ramsay reacted. I know Mark is gonna remember this for the rest of his life. It was the first day for the top 20 in season 8 of MasterChef. The first challenge of the day was a mystery box challenge. The box had a paper grocery bag that contained ingredients like broccoli, bananas, carrots, ground beef, chicken breast, rice, canned tomatoes, white cheddar cheese, and chocolate. The contestants had 1 hour to cook the judges a dish using the ingredients, with a huge advantage at stake. Once the challenge was over, Chef Ramsay announced that 3 home cooks stood out amongst the top 20. He then called Sam Rife Passeru, Heather Dombrowski, and Mark Togney to the front. Mark was on cloud 9, believing that he had won the advantage. However, Mark was completely stunned when Chef Ramsay dropped a bomb.
You 3 stood out for all the wrong reasons.
The 3 of them were sent into the wine room, and after that, the judges called the top 3 home cooks one by one. That being Yachicha Holston, Jennifer Williams, and Brian O'Brien. After the judging was over, Chef Ramsay announced Brian as the winner of the first challenge. And because he won the mystery box challenge, Brian was immune from the elimination test. Christina then chose to save Jennifer and Yachicha since they showed great skills. Ramsay then announced that everyone except Sam, Heather, and Mark would be saved since everyone made great dishes in the challenge. The bottom 3 cooks were called back and asked to lay their dishes in front of the judges. And this is what Chef Ramsay thought about them.
Each of these dishes are way off.
None of them had shown the level of skill and technique that the judges were looking for. This trio now had to prove their worth to the judges in the elimination test. After a disastrous failure, who do you think would impress the judges? For the elimination test challenge, they were handed new grocery bags containing the same ingredients used in the mystery box challenge. This time, they had 45 minutes to redo their dishes, either by making a new dish or using the feedback they got to make an improved version of the same dish. As the trio got started with the challenge, the judges hoped that they used their second chance wisely. Heather and Sam looked serious, but Mark on the other hand moved slowly. And this reflected in the level of seriousness he had for the competition.
If you aren't pushing yourself, I'm not interested in having you in this kitchen any longer.
With 30 minutes left, Sam was making meatloaf and decided to go with the same thing he'd made earlier. But instead of just correcting his mistakes, Sam made the same mistake again by not putting the meatloaf in the oven, which takes at least 30 minutes to cook. Chef Ramsay was discouraged since it was the meatloaf that put him in the bottom 3. He then gave Sam a tip: if he wanted to make it perfect this time, it should go in the oven. Meanwhile, Heather was making a new dish, grilled chicken kebabs with broccoli slaw. And Mark decided to redo the pancakes with chocolate chips and a side of baked eggs. When Christina went to his station to check on what he was doing, Mark explained his situation using a football analogy. And this is how Christina reacted.
Then why did you try the flea flicker? So I'm gonna
What's with all these football analogies?
Mark could get eliminated, but it looks like he was still playing games. His lack of seriousness made the judges think that he didn't care about the competition. With 10 minutes left, Chef Ramsay walked over to Heather's station. Brining the chicken to impart flavors takes 24 hours, and Chef Ramsay was surprised to see Heather trying to do that in 45 minutes. And to keep her chicken from getting super dry and rough, Ramsay offered her a piece of advice and said this:
Brush the chimichurri onto the chicken as you're cooking it.
Heather took the advice and continued working on perfecting the dish. But just as Chef Ramsay was leaving the station, Mark said something disrespectful.
You know what you could do, Heather? Just do what I do and ignore them.
Oh no, he didn't just say that. And to Chef Ramsay too. I know this isn't gonna end well for him. Ramsay was so pissed that he first asked Mark if he thought the competition was a joke. But what he said next left everyone in shock.
Take it serious or take your apron off. Seriously. Take it serious or take your apron off.
Mark's comments had left everyone feeling stunned.
What is Mark doing? This is embarrassing.
If his attitude continued to be this awful, he wouldn't last very long on the show. As the time ran out, all 3 contestants were ready with their dishes. Sam was the first to have his dish judged, and the judges felt his dish was better than the previous one. However, the presentation was a mess. Heather was the second person to have her dish judged, and the judges thought it was nice and liked the presentation. Mark was the last one to go, and he presented a chocolate chip pancake with baked eggs, bacon, and cilantro. The eggs just looked ugly, and looking at them, Chef Ramsay asked Mark if he was happy with his work. Mark was just arrogant and said this.
In all aspects of it.
When Ramsay questioned Mark if this was the best breakfast he's ever cooked, he actually agreed that it was. The arrogance pissed Chef Ramsay off, but how was the dish? Take a look at this.
That is tough to look at.
Although the pancakes were cooked nicely, the judges decided to boot Mark from the competition. Because, well, with that kind of attitude, he would upset the entire spirit of the competition. And so, Mark was the first to leave MasterChef Season 8. But in this next challenge, Chef Ramsay lost it when he didn't have enough portions of meat left to feed all of his customers. Why? The home cooks had given it all away. In the 12th season of MasterChef Australia, the contestants from the previous seasons were back to win the title of MasterChef. It's just like Hell's Kitchen Season 17's All-Stars. On the second day, the contestants were given their first team service challenge. They were divided into 2 groups, and each team had to prepare a 3-course meal for 120 guests. The judges revealed 3 ingredients: black garlic, ginger, and potatoes. And each team had to feature one of the ingredients for each course. It was actually Chef Ramsay's team service challenge, so you can imagine how tough he was going to be during this service. The blue team had some whiz in their team, like Reynold Pornomo, Amelia Jackson, and Laura Sherritt. In the green team, Callum Han had to face Chef Ramsay's anger. Callum's lamb looked great, and you won't believe what it was compared to. A foot spa? Yikes. Callum promised to come around and not disappoint the famous chef. As the green team was busy sweating and stressing, Reynold made the challenge look like a breeze. He was operating 7 pieces of equipment in a swirl of liquid nitrogen. With the service pressing on, Chef Ramsay went over to the blue team to check how much pork was left. And he was left frustrated with the team's disappointing reply.
Left, I'm trying to talk to you guys. No one's talking. That is it? Yes.
The blue team still had 9 tables to go, and this drove Chef Ramsay nuts. He gathered the blue team and told them that about 36 people were still waiting for their food. Plus, they didn't have enough pork to serve. They only had 8 portions left, and Chef Ramsay wasn't having it. Ramsay then ordered the blue team to bring up the wasted pork tray, but they didn't have enough. And this left the famous chef really frustrated. He then asked the team if they threw some away, and the team denied it, but they had to look for a solution. With no backup pork, the blue team was in a huge dilemma. And well, Chef Ramsay was appalled.
But you said 16 portion yield. Yeah. I said be smart, trim what off that.
Ben Milbourne said that the reason they didn't have a backup was because they had a plan. Chef Ramsay was already frustrated, so what actually happened? The problem was the portion sizes. They were giving away way too much. But this wasn't acceptable, so this is what Chef Ramsay had to say.
Can we come together as a team and come up with a solution to how we finish this, please?
Of course, they couldn't just go back to the table and say, hey, we gave away way too much, so could I take your plate back? Chef Ramsay wanted an immediate solution, or he'd enlist all the contestants into the elimination test round. And well, this is the idea they came up with.
That can be saved. Down the middle, trim.
Ben quickly got Reynold to get the portion they needed for the rest. Thankfully, they quickly got to work and Reynold did his magic, serving to the rest of the tables. But wait, because if you thought they were tough before, wait till you see these no-holds-barred moments. The judges went all in.
You're such a snob.
And this contestant right here really stirred the pot with his arrogance. If you haven't guessed by now, I'm talking about this person right here. Oh, Christian, what a handful, right? Well, it all started with the Mystery Box Challenge. The contestants were tasked with creating one amazing vegetarian dish. I'm talking a hardcore vegetarian dish, and the contestants weren't too thrilled about the idea.
It's all vegetables. I'm like,
well, you have to agree, making a vegetarian dish is far harder than cooking meat, right? Is it just me who thinks this, or what? Either way, as the contestants got busy with the challenge, there was this one contestant who felt threatened by Jennifer's culinary skills. So what did he do? Well, he just buried that feeling under a mountain of cockiness.
I think she's a bitch, and she's gonna get what she deserves.
And wait till you hear what he said next.
Thinks that she can cook better than me. I'll cook her onto the table any day of the week.
Despite Christian's confidence, what he actually produced said otherwise.
Individual who got tripped up. The lack of protein. No meat, no fish.
But wait, that wasn't all.
Put that person into obscurity.
The famous chef finally revealed who he was talking about, and Christian's face dropped to the floor.
Christian!
Man, it must have felt super humiliating to have served the worst dish, especially after acting all high and mighty like he did. And Ramsay definitely took him to task over it.
It wasn't cohesive. It wasn't properly thought through.
But that's not all.
And the whole sort of style of the dish was strange.
It wasn't just Chef Ramsay who wasn't a fan. It never is it?
We didn't expect it from you. It was really something subpar. We were very disappointed.
Oh man, that must have stung real bad. However, Christian decided it would be a great idea to fire right back.
I think you're wrong. I don't think my dish is the worst dish here.
The nerve, I tell you, man. I mean, no one in their right mind would dare to speak against Joe or any of the judges for that matter. Especially after serving something as horrendous as this. But what's more, Christian didn't stop at that. He decided to, straight up, throw more than a few people under the bus, all the while trying to make himself look superior.
Esther's dish looked pretty Think what you want.
But Joe was just done with the nonsense, and he put Christian in his place.
Well, you have the right to disagree, but we're telling you the way we see it, and we thought the dish sucked.
However, Christian remained adamant. With every single criticism that was dropped in his direction, he shot back with more and more disagreement. The famous chef's patience was wearing thin, and it wasn't long before he burst out.
Well, we're trying to give you constructive criticism. If you're a man, you'd take it on the chin.
What he said next? I don't know, it just really hit the spot for me.
Unfortunately, your talent's not matching your arrogance. The dish was a letdown. End of story.
The famous chef's anger was totally justified. The judges were there for a reason, and they wouldn't let anyone, let alone a crappy cook like Christian, belittle them. But this argument was nothing compared to what happened in this next episode.
You know what work is, okay? No, I got where I got because I work.
Now, Season 5 was absolutely insane as a baseline. And if you've ever binged it like I have, you'll agree that it's probably one of the most chaotic seasons ever. And things got seriously heated all the way back in Episode 2, which was the first mystery box challenge of the season.
Bananas, strawberries, blueberries, brandy, ladyfingers.
The contestants were tasked with preparing a dessert, and the home cooks had 90 minutes to whip up their dish. The drama kicked off right from prep, when Chef Ramsay came over to Elizabeth's station and asked her a pretty nerve-wracking question.
Who's gonna screw up tonight? Why Leslie?
To make matters worse, Chef Ramsay started to pry into the obvious tension between the two.
Because he likes to flap his jaws and not cook so much.
Oh, Leslie was getting pissed. And all you had to do was take a look at her face to see that.
Talk too much.
And the next thing you know, he decided to stand up for himself.
I've never said anything to you, Elizabeth. You want to get ugly? Let's get ugly. You don't know where the hell I've been.
Okay, first things first, Leslie's reaction was completely justified. I mean, he wasn't getting into her business, so it wasn't fair for her to react like that. But was she gonna stop? You know, something tells me that she wasn't.
Live in Malibu.
Oh. However, Leslie decided that enough was enough.
You want to know why I live in Malibu, sweetheart? It's because I work my ass off. You know what work is, okay?
No, you don't get to shush him. You started all this nonsense. And Leslie was not gonna shut his mouth in the face of a little bit of shushing.
No, I got where I got because I work.
Oh, I know.
She didn't exactly digest the fact that he earned his place in Malibu. It wasn't just handed to him.
I worked so hard to get where I am. Obviously, your wife works, and you don't.
So what's the big deal if this guy stays at home while his wife works? There are tons of stay-at-home moms out there, and I don't see anyone rioting over them. So why the double standard when it's a guy, huh? What happened to equality? Isn't that what we want? Plus, let's not forget that being a homemaker doesn't mean that you're not working hard. Those folks are juggling a ton of shit at home. I know my mom definitely did. It's kind of funny how she keeps going after him with words like that. It's like she's super insecure. I mean, if she's just jealous, why not just admit that? As for Leslie, he was beyond pissed.
Don't want you to me about where I live. Figure out how I got there.
Earmuffs.
And well, he just had to get it off his chest.
I work. You want drama? I'll give it to you. You ain't seen yet.
Meanwhile, Chef Ramsay, who had been a silent witness this entire time, decided to intervene.
Leslie,
yes,
what's going on?
I've never even spoke to this girl, and they say all I do is talk.
Leslie felt like Elizabeth was just jealous because he spoke to everyone else and not her. Probably she was just looking for a chance to vent or something. But the famous chef wasn't willing to let personal rivalry take the stage. He decided to pull it together and remind Leslie that he was the eldest on the show and it was high time that he started behaving so. And like the mature man that he is, he decided to do just that.
I'm sorry.
Apology accepted.
Yeah, the man handled it like a pro and apologized right away. It just goes to show that people who can own up to their mistakes are really the ones who are the most sure of themselves, not insecure guys like Christian. But I can't say the same for my next pick. If there's one moment from Season 5 that really stood out, then it was definitely the intense showdown between Dan and Cutter. Now this moment right here brought a whole new level of drama to the series. It was the elimination challenge, and the contestants were tasked with preparing something totally unique.
Please, head back to your stations.
As the winner of the previous challenge, Courtney was tasked with creating 7 teams in pairs of 2. And I'm sure you can figure out that it wasn't going to be a common collected pairing process.
Cutter with Dan.
Wow. To pair Dan and Cutter was probably the worst decision ever, and you'll see why in a minute. The challenge hadn't even begun entirely, and there was already a lot of tension in the air.
Still making 2 separate, you see what I'm saying? If you're doing vegetables and fish, I'm doing protein and meat. We're not marrying the dishes together.
These grown-ass men couldn't even agree on one protein without getting all frustrated. So you can bet that the rest of the challenge was bound to be a total mess. I mean, here's Cutter's point of view.
He is not listening to what I'm trying to tell him. These proteins don't go together. You need something to balance.
Dan, on the flip side, was totally stuck. He just couldn't decide.
He's going into Dan's shutdown mode. He still can't figure out what all vegetables he's using.
So, when it was time to grab all the stuff from the pantry, both Cutter and Dan totally threw away their chance of getting enough ingredients for their surf and turf meal.
We have 2 proteins that do not pair together and 7 items out of the pantry.
And when Chef Ramsay came over to their station during prep, he could already see that things weren't going so well.
And a warm tuna salsa, like a soy sauce with tuna chunks on it to go over the top and eat it like sashimi style.
Apparently, they plan on topping their dish with tuna chunks sashimi style. And we all know how sashimi is served. Raw. But Dan had different plans.
Right, why is it cooked then? Are we definitely on the same page?
Chef Ramsay was obviously worried for them.
Guys, are we okay? Cutter?
It was this very question that finally did it for Cutter, and he didn't hold back.
No, I ain't okay, I ain't gonna lie. No, I ain't okay.
Cutter's frustration was completely justified if you ask me.
I'm just so pissed off at Dan Wu right now because, I mean, he just does not listen to me.
But that's not all he was concerned about.
I know I'm probably going into a pressure test because I have an idiot as a partner who just wouldn't listen to me.
Chef Ramsay had enough and told him to get it together. Because there's no way these guys had any chance of coming out of the elimination test safe and sound. And while Cutter was flipping out, Dan was super chill.
Things aren't going perfectly, and I'm like, let's not worry about it. Let's just put something on a plate.
It was time for the judges to taste, and the reaction to the dish was shocking. Or maybe not so much.
What in the is that?
The pantry was stocked with all the ingredients they could have possibly needed, and yet this is what they came up with? The famous chef was not impressed. He needed an explanation, and he needed it fast.
He has an idea, I listened to him. I told him I didn't like it. He just starts grabbing and this is what you get. Ran out of time in the pantry.
Dan tried to explain the situation as calmly as possible, but Cutter was not having it.
That neither one, they're both lean and they don't go together.
We didn't get enough ingredients to really make anything work.
Oh man, he was really riled up, that's for sure.
You didn't have an idea. You didn't have anything reeled in what you wanted to do. You were just grabbing stuff and you kept telling, we'll get it as we go.
Seeing how things were, Dan was willing to take responsibility for what they had made. But just you wait till you see Cutter's side of the story.
Decent. Through all the stuff, I think it actually came out tasting decent.
I doubt that. And well, even Chef Ramsay agreed.
That is possibly one of the worst dishes in this competition so far.
Plus, oh, by the way, guess what Joe did when it was his turn to judge? I guess you already know what he was about to do next, huh?
Do the honors.
Dan took full responsibility for the situation as Cutter dreaded the upcoming pressure test. Now, getting into an argument with a fellow contestant is one thing, but a judge? Yeah, that's a whole different level of being messed up. And guess which judge they decided to pick on? Oh, Joe. Oh no. Anyway, in season 4, Howard decided to spice things up a bit by rubbing Joe the wrong way. It was episode 9 during the elimination round, and the cooks were even given a detailed demonstration by none other than Lydia Basinich herself.
Smooth and buttery and soft. You continue the kneading?
Yeah, an absolute legend in the culinary sphere. Far more than her son will ever be. Anyway, when the cooks got busy, Joe walked over to Howard's station for a quick update. Howard admitted that he wasn't very well versed in making pasta. Despite that, he planned on making a braised chicken and bell pepper filling for his agnolotti, which Lydia found rather unusual.
Pay attention, you know, we talk a lot about textures and all of that.
I will do so. What are you doing with the asparagus?
To make things worse, when Joe quizzed him about the asparagus, guess what he had to say?
I'm not sure yet.
Wow.
All right, good luck, Howard.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, doesn't sound very exciting. Not a single bit. Anyway, cut to the tasting, and Howard's confidence took a nosedive. He wasn't feeling too sure about it, but he hoped that the flavors would make up for it.
Braised chicken, and then it's spiced with a little cumin.
Yeah.
However, Lydia wasn't buying into his idea of adding cumin. And the taste was just like what she expected. disappointing.
It's not harmonious with a pasta dish like this.
She actually had to remind him to not go overboard, especially with pasta. However, when it was Joe's turn, well, he certainly did not inherit his mother's sweetness.
The whole thing with you is you have this very cavalier attitude. You don't know what you're cooking.
The next thing you know, Joe was showing Howard who was the boss around these parts.
And I got screwed up, and I'm getting tired of it. Because if you were smart, you would duplicate a plate.
Damn, that was brutal. In fact, Joe went as far as rambling about how ignorant Howard was being in the competition so far. And guess what? Just as Joe was about to taste his dish, Howard decided to interject.
You want 15 of the same dishes up here?
Well, it literally pushed Joe over the edge. That man simply lost it.
Putting your spin on everything you make because you want to show us how cutesy and intelligent.
And nope, once you unleash the beast, there's no stopping him.
Well, that's going to get you a one-way ticket back to wherever you came from. And then you could show your friends and the 6 people who told you were good.
I mean, when a MasterChef judge drops a line like that, you know they mean business. So yeah, Howard's chances of getting the boot were definitely sky high. And Joe made it crystal clear that if Howard didn't change his attitude, he'd be stuck cooking at dinner parties while the rest of them shot for the stars and either became the next MasterChef or culinary powerhouses in their own right. See, the challenge was all about nailing the dish and then elevating it to the next level. But Howard was only focused on the fancy stuff and forgot to get the basics right.
Worse than a cook who can't boil is a narcissist in full denial. Thank you for nothing.
But Howard wasn't gonna stop being his same old disrespectful self so soon.
Joe's just... This is a competition about flair, about finesse, about creativity.
Honestly, it just sounds like he was trying to cover up his failure. Anyway, when it was time to send someone packing, Chef Ramsay said it like it was.
One of you has reached the end of the road.
And guess who decided to make a bold move? Howard. Yup, Howard got the boot for being too full of himself and making the worst agnolotti out there. Honestly, it was about time. Anyway, if you thought cooks and judges squabbling was uncommon, then, I don't know, go watch literally any other of my videos because you're dead wrong. In the meantime though, here's something that's actually uncommon, one judge throwing down against another. Yup, so I'm talking about episode 19 of season 10, and the contestants were very close to the finale. And you know what that meant, the challenges were about to ramp up big time.
Now, tonight, you'll be making homemade sausages.
Now, I'm pretty sure that everyone knows by now that making sausages all by yourself is a task. But Aaron stepped up to show everyone how to make a perfect sausage.
Now we're gonna add some beautiful acid. We have some cider vinegar.
Aaron was all gentle and precise, making sure that each and every sausage looked and tasted the best.
Now what we're gonna go ahead and do is add the bit that has the actual casing to it, okay?
As for Dorian, who was initially a bit nervous, caught onto Aaron's vibe and got inspired. It's really amazing how seeing someone else do their thing with skill can really uplift your spirits.
Watching Chef Aaron and seeing how he's bringing his culture he's making is definitely an inspiration.
Sometime later, Dorian was killing it. Looks like Aaron's pep talk actually got through to her, and it wasn't just empty words after all.
It's smelling good up here. Keep going.
Thank you. That is so good.
She decided to show off her southern roots with her dish. She whipped up some beans and tomatoes with a hint of garlic, and to get this, she decided to poach her sausages in a sauce that's actually inside the sausage. Wow, who'd have thought of that? Even Aaron and Joe were impressed with the idea.
What I really like about what you're doing here is that you're reinforcing the flavors of the actual sausage into other components of the dish.
Safe to say that Dorian was off to a great start. And when it was time for the tasting, she didn't disappoint.
Sausage looks hearty, and that wonderful bean stew underneath it, it's got dive in all over it.
Dorian presented the judges with a wild boar, fennel, and apple sausage with cannellini beans. The famous chef hadn't even tasted the dish, and he was already a fan of it.
Love the idea of the toasted slices on the top. It tells me it's gonna scream of texture and dark, rich flavors.
Everything on that plate was just perfection, but Joe wasn't exactly feeling it for some reason.
Yeah, I disagree. I think the toast cheapens the dish.
Ramsay was obviously weirded out by his opinion. I mean, it's garlic bread. Who doesn't like garlic bread?
So you don't serve garlic bread in your restaurants?
No.
That was just straight up offensive in Chef Ramsay's book.
Oh,
There's no such thing as garlic bread in Italy. So I think it cheapens it, it makes it less than it could be.
Oh no, the famous chef wasn't having that.
Right, the garlic bread?
That's the kind of restaurants you guys go to.
Would you like a bread?
No, I don't want any garlic bread.
You're such a snob.
The fact that he just called Joe a snob on national television honestly made my day when I was watching this live. And it's for sure my guilty pleasure when I need a pick-me-up. Anyway, finally, Joe gave in. Once he dug into the dish, he couldn't help but compliment it for its unique flavors.
It's sweet, and tomatoes and beans really work together. Sausage itself is a wonderful texture.
Pretty wild, right? Just when you thought it couldn't get any harsher, the judges proved they're not done dishing out tough love. Buckle up for one last round. We've always seen Chef Ramsay lose it, but Judge Joe? What the hell happened to make him this angry? Well, these are the times that judges got super angry on MasterChef. And this one right here had the nerve to talk back to the judges. Would they be able to overlook this disrespect? In the 11th episode of Season 4, the top 13 cooks were given a mystery box challenge. The home cooks had to make a dish using different parts of a pig's head in 90 minutes. After 90 minutes, the judges chose Lin Chi, Jesse Liziak, and Johnny Blanchard as the top 3 dishes. Lin served a braised pork cheek with Asian braised pork tongue. Next, Jesse served the cheek and ear with black-eyed peas. Meanwhile, Johnny served a tongue and cheek taco. Lin's dish was chosen as the best one, which meant that he was safe for the night. During the elimination test, Christine Ha, winner of MasterChef Season 3, was invited as a guest. Since Lin was the winner, he was presented with 3 of Christine's favorite ingredients: catfish, chicken, and Dungeness crab. He also got the advantage of deciding which contestant would be cooking what. He was asked to pick one contestant who would use the same ingredient as him while the other would use another. Since he was safe, he now had an opportunity to knock someone out by picking a difficult ingredient to work with. And well, this is the contestant that he picked.
I think it might have to be Chrissy. She has this confidence that I think no one else really has.
So, what ingredient did he choose? I have to say, Lin played it smart by going for this.
Catfish.
I don't know if they have many catfish in South Philly.
As for the rest of the home cooks, Lin picked the most obvious ingredient being Dungeness crab. I mean, he would have been the dumbest guy had he picked the third ingredient that was left on the counter. And I'm really glad that he didn't. When Chrissy saw her protein, she was all irritated about it, and this is what she had to say.
You just with the wrong girl.
This challenge wasn't going to be an easy one. Before the challenge even started, Christine upped the difficulty level by adding in blindfolds. Now, the home cooks had 1 hour to cook a stunning dish with blindfolds on. The challenge was really chaotic, with everyone dropping things one after another. And then, Chef Ramsay revealed something that put a smile on everyone's face.
Christine has a very cruel sense of humor. Take your blindfolds off!
Oh my God!
Whew, what a relief. But this didn't mean the challenge was going to be any easier. When Joe and Chef Graham went to Chrissy's station to see what she was cooking, they were shocked. She made mashed potatoes and was cooking the fish very oddly. Joe asked her if the food was like survival food, to which Chrissy replied by saying it was southern catfish. Hearing this, when Joe compared it to Philly-style catfish, Chrissy became very defensive and said this.
It's fried catfish with some mashed potatoes and asparagus.
Joe was disappointed with Chrissy's choice of dish. She was among the top 13 after all. But rather than questioning her choice and upping her game, she started arguing, which pissed Joe off. All he was doing was trying to tell her to not play it safe, but Chrissy couldn't keep her mouth shut. And well, Joe left her station by saying this.
Well, I'm the one that matters anyway, what I think, so.
Honestly, Joe isn't someone who gets mad very easily, so this whole thing that went down didn't look very good for Chrissy. This one move could be her ticket out of the competition, and it looked like Lin's decision was paying off. 1 hour later, Chrissy was the first contestant to have her dish judged. And just like she said earlier, she presented fried catfish with bacon cheddar mashed potatoes and asparagus. The first thing Chef Ramsay did after seeing this dish was describe it to Christine, and this is what he said.
Looks like a TV dinner.
But wait, did Chrissy actually leave the skin on the fish? Was that out of laziness, or did she just leave it on intentionally? Either way, this was gonna backfire because catfish skin can be as hard as a snake's, and nobody wants to eat that. Chef Ramsay had to actually take the skin off before he could taste the fish. And as a result of that, most of the seasoning she added to the fish was stripped away. But listening to the arrogance in her tone, Chef Ramsay said this.
Are you cooking for the judges tonight to stay in this competition, or are you cooking for yourself again?
As for the taste, Christine found the dish to be a little too earthy and catfishy. She added that it needed a little more elevated flavor. Meanwhile, Chef Ramsay found the dish to be way too fatty since she left the skin on. Chef Graham was also disappointed with the dish. But when Joe tasted Chrissy's dish, this is what he did. Joe found the flavor to be too muddy. Referring to the conversation he had earlier with her at her station, Joe said this with a stern voice.
You think you know it all? Then go cook it all yourself at home.
However, when Chrissy became defensive yet again, Joe got really pissed.
You're wasting my time, and I don't like to have my time wasted. For me, you're done.
He then complimented Lynn for showing him who was really there to play. Chrissy, however, wasn't ready to bow down in shame. As she was heading back to her station, she claimed that her catfish was delicious and that everyone was just jealous of her. But just as she was praising her own dish, Joe happened to overhear her statements, and this is what he said.
Have the balls to say it up here in front of me.
It's no surprise that Chrissy's dish was in the bottom 3, along with Luca Monfils and Beth Kirby's. However, the judges showed us that they were fair when they voted for Beth's dish as the worst among the 3. However, if we're being honest, it was Chrissy's attitude that was the worst by far. Almost everyone expected it to be Chrissy's last day, but it was Beth who left the competition that night. By far, when it comes to attitude, Chrissy's known as one of the worst contestants on MasterChef. She always got into arguments and never accepted her mistakes. Moreover, she couldn't even take criticism, and worst of all, she was a bully. Strong words to use, don't you think? But, well, that's exactly what she was in the 14th episode. The red team had to face the pressure test after losing the team challenge. Before the test commenced, Chef Ramsay asked Savannah Sturgis who was the weakest performer. So she reluctantly named Chrissy, and when Chef Ramsay asked Brie Couture, she also named Chrissy. After that, Chef Ramsay announced that only 4 members would be participating in the pressure test. And the one who wouldn't compete would be chosen by the red team. They only had 5 minutes to discuss, and during their discussion, things escalated between Brie and Chrissy. As they began to discuss their problems, Chrissy complained about being singled out as the weakest performer by the red team. Hearing this, Brie told her to stop taking it so personally, but Chrissy wasn't ready to back down.
No way. 3 times I told you that I didn't think it was a good idea to see them. No, you didn't.
Chrissy was stubborn and put the whole blame on Savannah. And when Savannah still tried to point out what she said during the challenge, Chrissy started cursing. Brie then had enough of Chrissy's attitude and things got really out of hand.
I didn't say it was Who were you? What did you do on the team?
Chrissy then threatened to punch Brie if she didn't shut up, but Brie stood up for herself.
Can't sit here and talk things out like an adult. All you ever want to do is hit everyone in the face.
The team then chose Jordan Roots to save face, and as a result, Luca, Brie, Savannah, and Chrissy were put in the pressure test. They ultimately hoped that Chrissy would finally get eliminated because everybody was sick and tired of her attitude. Well, that's one way of getting on everyone's nerves, but this next contestant made a disgusting mistake that definitely shouldn't go unpunished. In the 12th episode of Season 4, the top 12 were introduced to Anya and Aaron by the judges. They explained that they would be cooking for the couple's wedding. This was basically another team challenge. Anya gave a list of food items that she didn't want to see at her wedding reception, and this left a lot of cooks in dismay. Chef Ramsay then revealed that they would receive help and guidance from him and Chef Graham to ensure things went smoothly. To be a little bit more specific, Ramsay and Graham took charge of both the appetizers and dessert courses, and the top 12 focused on just the entrees. The home cooks were divided into 2 teams and cooked for over 100 guests, of which 15 were vegetarian. Since Natasha Kerniak and James Nelson were the winners of the previous challenge, they got to pick their teams. James, who is the blue team's captain, chose Lynn, Jesse, Brie, Johnny, and Luca. Meanwhile, Natasha, the red team's captain, chose Eddie Jackson, Savannah Sturgis, Bethany Rosos, Jordan Roots, and Chrissy. As an added little bonus, Natasha and James also got to exempt 1 team member from cooking in the challenge. This would grant them immunity should their team lose. Shockingly, they chose to exempt Chrissy and Brie. Now, both teams were given 2 hours for the challenge. Natasha and James were invited to taste Chef Graham's appetizer, a pea soup with whipped cream fraiche. Plus, they tasted Chef Ramsay's dessert, sticky toffee pudding with brown bread, ice cream, and caramel sauce. They now had to execute their dishes at the same level as the judges. This definitely wasn't going to be an easy task. In the blue team, James decided on a rack lamb with parsnip puree. It would also include a vegetarian side dish of grilled mushroom over goat cheese crème fraîche. In the red team, Natasha decided on a halibut beurre blanc, and for the vegetarian dish, the team decided on an eggplant and tomato stack. As the wedding ceremony started, the preparation began at the back. The red team started to struggle, with them burning carrots to a crisp, much to the judges' amusement. Since Natasha seemed to be falling apart, Chef Ramsay went and asked her if she was alright, since she looked really flustered. Natasha said that she needed more support from her team, much to the red team's dismay. Chef Ramsay then told Natasha to refocus, bring her team together, and asked her to be more vocal. But Natasha didn't seem to be listening to Chef Ramsay, and that angered him deeply. Meanwhile, the blue team's preparation was going smoothly, but the red team was still struggling badly. As the reception began, Chef Graham's appetizer made its way to the guest tables. And well, obviously, everyone enjoyed it. After a delicious appetizer, the guests' expectations were really high. Both teams needed to deliver the exact top-notch quality. With only 30 seconds left to go for the entrees in the red team, Savannah still needed 3 more minutes with her prep. This made the judges incredibly worried. The blue team assigned Lin with the presentation, and he wasn't executing things up to expectations. Looking at this mess, Chef Ramsay was frustrated, and the delay only made things worse.
Everyone's just stopped all of a sudden. I've never seen such disorganization.
The first serving was at the bride and groom's table, and both teams weren't ready yet. In the red team, Natasha was trying to do everything by herself, which made Chef Ramsay furious.
Have to stop running around like a headless chicken. You position yourself at the table and you expedite.
The red team finally got it together and sent out their first plate. The blue team was also ready, only to be stopped by a very angry Chef Ramsay for serving it on dirty plates. The red team's halibut dish was served to the bride and groom's table, whereas the blue team replated their lamb rack dish. And this made Chef Ramsay extremely angry with the blue team.
And it's taken 7 minutes to get 4 plates out. You're running around like headless chickens.
The blue team finally got back on track and their dish made it to the dining room. In the red team, Natasha finally got herself together and showed some commendable leadership skills. But the blue team was still behind, much to Chef Ramsay's frustration.
Got 2 tables dragging the blue team's entrees. Come on!
Lin started feeling the pressure of having to keep up with the service. He started sweating profusely and he was violating the health code. Seeing this, Chef Ramsay became infuriated.
I know it's hard. You cannot sweat in the food.
Lin was plating the dishes inconsistently, and an annoyed Chef Ramsay asked him if he was blind in one eye. Joe then came and informed Chef Ramsay about tables with no blue plates, leaving the guests hungry. Things were so bad that Joe feared the guests would leave without tasting the blue team's dishes. The stress got to Lin so much that he started making a huge mistake. And that mistake doubled Chef Ramsay's anger. He used the same cloth to wipe the plates that he used to wipe his sweat. Yuck! One guest even told Joe that if he had been in the restaurant, he would have walked out. On the other hand, the red team was sending out their plates at a good pace. The blue team was making mistake after mistake, and seeing nothing going right, Chef Ramsay put Chef Graham as the expediter. With Chef Graham's help, the blue team was finally sending out their dishes. But obviously, it was the red team who won this challenge. However, in this next entry, 2 teams locked horns over one challenge. But when you don't adhere to the rules, you face the consequences. And no, it's not pretty. In the 14th episode of Season 3, the top 14 competed in a team challenge. They needed to cook a breakfast for 130 guests residing in the same hotel they were staying at. The judges split them into 2 teams, with 7 members in each team. Since Christine Ha and Josh Marks were the winners of the previous challenge, they were named the team captains and got to choose who they wanted in their team. Christine was the captain of the red team, and she chose Felix Fang, Scott Little, Tanya Noble, Mike Hill, Stacey Amagrand, and Ryan Umane. Josh was the captain of the blue team, and he chose Becky Reams, Frank Mirando, Anna Rossi, Monte Carlo, David Martinez, and Tali Clavijo. The judges then revealed that Christina had an advantage of swapping a member. Since she had the best dish in the previous challenge, she swapped Ryan out for Becky. The judges then assigned the breakfast menu, fruit salad, pancakes, oatmeal, eggs benedict, egg white omelette, and 2 eggs with bacon and spinach style. Both teams had 90 minutes for prep and 90 minutes for serving the 130 guests. The teams needed to pick an expediter, so in the blue team, they picked Monty, and in the red team, they picked Felix. In the blue team, Josh assigned David to the oatmeal, Anna and Tally to the fruit salad, Frank to the pancakes, and everyone else except for Monty to the omelets and eggs benedict. In the red team, Christine assigned herself and Becky to the eggs benedict, Scott to the pancakes, and everyone else except for Felix to the oatmeal, fruit salads, and omelets. With only 35 minutes left before the service began, Chef Ramsay got concerned with the red team. It seemed like they didn't make enough hollandaise sauce for the eggs benedict. In the blue team, Chef Graham was concerned with their bacon and spinach. Both teams were making the judges concerned. But from the red team, Christine was concerned with Felix not being so vocal like how Monty was in the blue team. As the service began, in the blue team, Monty and Josh got off to a little screaming match. Now, because of that, the red team's first order didn't go out on time. And well, this frustrated Chef Ramsay.
For the last 5 minutes, you've just shut down and there's no communication going on.
Meanwhile, the blue team served theirs, and they were also sending out orders at a good pace. The blue team was receiving good reviews from their guests, but the red team faced another problem. Felix tried to solve the problem by using minimal sauce on the eggs benedict, but that's not how it works. An eggs benedict needs to have a good amount of hollandaise sauce. Seeing this, Chef Ramsay chewed her out and told her that it wasn't a dessert that she was drizzling the sauce on. Since Felix was going nowhere with her communication, Christine took charge of being the vocal leader. And because of that, the red team rose up from disaster. In the blue team, their standards dropped down since Chef Ramsay discovered pancakes coming out sloppy and eggs Benedict being raw. And this made Chef Ramsay annoyed.
You're cooking them, he's taking them, you're serving them. It's wrong.
Things got even worse for the blue team when Joe returned with a plate with hair on it. In the red team, Felix finally started communicating pretty well and orders started flying out. Meanwhile, in the blue team, Josh and Monty got into an argument and things were falling apart.
That was a hot. That's ridiculous.
What's going on?
Now, time was up for both teams. However, Felix didn't pay attention to the announcement of the challenge being over and continued to work. And this pissed Chef Ramsay off.
I just told you, time is up.
Sorry,
No, look at me. No cheating.
Despite all the problems, the red team was declared the winner. So, these were the times that judges got super angry on MasterChef. I'll be covering more of these in the upcoming videos, so make sure to check in. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, guys!